thank all of you so much for just joining me and being a part of this program today. We have a wonderful, intimate crowd, and so I'm excited about that. I'm excited to share some incredible things with all of the wonderful people that are here. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Not only am I excited, but I'm really looking forward to sharing some keys with each of you as it relates to leading and working with a remote or virtual team. So we're gonna get into this. There's gonna be a couple of interactive activities as well. And so hopefully some of you are ready to talk and some of you are ready to share some information as we begin to dive through this entire presentation. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with who I am, because there may be some of you here today that may not know who I am and may have heard about this webinar from someone, I just want to give you a quick glimpse of who I am. My name is Dr. Joshua Fredenburg, and I am a nationally recognized speaker. So I speak in the college market to approximately 85% of my speaking engagements, but the other 15% deals with corporations, associations, and churches. I'm also the author of 7 books. I'm a television expert, TEDx speaker, and president of the Circle of Change Leadership Conference, which is a national conference that we do each year that prepares students for career leadership success. In addition to that, my specialties lie in leadership, diversity, inclusion, retention, generational issues, and obviously this topic as well as it relates to virtual workers and virtual leadership. So I'm so excited for each of you to be here today. And to be quite honest with you, one of the reasons why I did this program is because throughout my doctoral journey, not only did I realize that there was a great need for helping people to become more effective at not only leading virtual teams, but also leading remote teams. But more importantly, as many of you are aware of, COVID-19 switched everything. It literally changed everything. It changed the way we work. It changed the way we lived. It changed everything that we do. And so based on COVID-19, I became more inspired to create this program that is ultimately purpose to help people to become more effective, not only as leading virtual teams, but also being a member of a virtual team as well as a remote worker or an employee. Because one of the things that I've discovered just very quickly is that if you're going to be an effective leader, if you're going to have career success, and if you're going to be an effective, what I call remote worker of the 21st century, it's important that not only do you embrace it, but more importantly, that you get the necessary training that is needed, I believe, in order to be effective as it relates to leading or working on a remote or virtual team. And there actually is a study that I read about in the Harvard Business Review. It was an article that was written in regards to virtual remote teams, and they found that most companies are not only set up for remote, are not only set up. So basically, most companies were not ready for remote working. Most companies were not ready to make the adjustment that came upon us with COVID-19. But they also found that there's tons of articles, there's tons of books that actually talk about virtual leadership, talk about remote working, how to manage a remote team, and a variety of other things. But one of the things that was interesting to me about this particular article is they discovered that they said that a lot of training needs to be done. In essence, that's why there's been so much articles. That's why there's been so many books, because there needs to be consistent training as it relates to virtual leadership, as it relates to being a remote worker, as it relates to leading a virtual team. Training is really important in order to become more effective. And I can share from my personal experience, being a national speaker, someone that's been traveling, someone that's been working remotely for the past 15 years, I'm still always figuring out ways, how can I do it better? How can I be more effective? What strategies can I do in order to do my job at an optimum level? Because I believe as leaders, I believe as employees, I believe as individuals that work with different virtual remote teams, we want to perform our job to the best of our ability. In order to do that, I believe there's another set of skills, there's another set of attributes that we must possess in order to be effective in what I call this virtual world. And so ultimately, based on this reality, not only have I created what I call 5 transformational programs. So as I began to study, as I began to think about the needs that people have, I decided to create 5 programs that revolve around virtual leadership, or also those that work on remote teams. Now, obviously, there's no way that I can go through these different programs because there's so many different things to talk about as it relates to leading or working with a virtual remote team. And so for this particular session, my goal is really to provide you with three. And to be quite honest, that's probably like appetizers to everything else that there is to discuss as it relates to virtual and leading or working with a remote team. But I'm going to provide you with three practical strategies or three tips over these next 45 minutes to an hour that I believe will not only enhance you as you adjust to a new way of working, adjust to a new way of living, just adjust in general, but I believe they're going to help you and be very beneficial to you, and something that I think that you'll be able to share with others as well. So I'm excited to jump into this, but before I do get started, I want you to take a moment, because I want to open it up for interaction. And there was actually a study. It was the State of Report in 2019, and there was a question that was asked. And the question that was asked is, what has been the biggest struggle as it relates to working remotely? So ultimately, there was a group of people, and they came together, and they said, what has been the biggest struggle? So one was unplugging after work. One was loneliness. One was collaboration or communication. One was distraction. One was being in different time zones than teammates, staying motivated, vacation time, others, or even sometimes finding reliable Wi-Fi. And so what I would like you to do really quickly in the chat room, if you can just very briefly tell me what has been some of your greatest challenges. What have been some of your greatest challenges as it relates to working remotely, working from home, or leading a virtual team? So the chat box is there. So if I can get some people just to share some of your challenges, what have been some of your challenges during this time? I like what Robert said. He said Wi-Fi, that accessibility, absolutely. Distraction from toddlers, man, that's so true. Like literally right now, my wife is taking my child out to the park, because if he was here right now, he'd be doing a variety of different things. Repetitive work, that's interesting. I love that. Nadine, checking out at the end of the day, right? Just checking out. Like the work continues because you're living with the work. I remember when I was really in college, I remember I used to be in my bedroom, and I used to have to study in my bedroom, and it was really difficult because there were moments I would just be tired, and you're looking right there at the bed, and you just want to go to sleep, but you know you can't go to sleep. That's a great point. Staying focused at times. Come on, that's so incredibly important. How do you stay focused? How do you stay focused on what you're trying to do? I love that, Robert. That's awesome. Are there any others? I love Robert also said, grateful to be working. However, it can be a challenge. Yes, it can be a challenge. That's why we're doing this today. I love that. I love that comment. Anybody else have any more challenges that they may have faced as it comes to remote work? And if you have any challenges, would love to hear some of the other things that you have identified in your transition that you would like to place in the chat room. So I'm just waiting for a couple more people. If not, we'll continue to move on. But again, we saw checking out, staying focused. That can be a huge challenge. So since many of you have not put in there, we'll go back to the PowerPoint, and I'm going to get back into it. So these are the challenges that were identified. For me personally, when I began to think about virtual leadership, when I began to think about remote working, when I began to think about ways that I can provide value to people and really help people become more effective, not only as leading a remote team, but more importantly, working with remote teams as well. These were the challenges that I was able to identify. And there's a lot. The first one was relationship building. When you're working remotely and you're working virtually, relationship building becomes a challenge. Another one is communication, effective communication. Another one is time management. How are you managing your time? That's a big one. Another one is no face-to-face interaction or supervision. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that later as we go on throughout this entire masterclass, but no face-to-face interaction or supervision. Slower response to questions and help. That's a big deal. When you need something, you can go right next door and talk to someone. But when it's virtual, you may send an email, you may send a text, but it doesn't mean you're going to get an immediate response. I heard a lot of those in leadership positions talk about less accountability and more trust. So there's less accountability. It's tougher to build that trust, less engagement. How do you deal with conflict? Conflict in person is different from conflict through an email, conflict through a text, or even conflict virtually. Different work styles. Some people may like Zoom. Some people may like Microsoft Teams. Some people may like Adobe. So what technology is best for your team? Different time zones, and that may not be everyone, but that's another issue. Uncertainty, and we talked about focus, and we talked about accessibility. Loneliness is another one, being by yourself, not being with a lot of people, i.e. I'm sitting here today and I'm giving a presentation, and although you're listening to me, there's no crowd, there's no audience, and so this can be a little different as well. Technology incompetence, and I think this is a really big one. Technology incompetence, being able to ultimately use technology and being aware of how to use technology. I love what Nadine just said. She said conflict in Zoom can be different and awkward. It can, right? It's a different setup. It's a different way of doing things. I even have found as a speaker, there's actually different platforms where I would rather do a keynote presentation. So for instance, if I was doing a keynote for an organization or a company, I prefer StreamYard. StreamYard is another online service that can be used. It links to Facebook Live as well as YouTube. And I've found that I can be more creative with that as far as what I'm trying to do when it comes to delivering a keynote presentation. Something like this is a little more easier in certain circumstances as well, also based on my Wi-Fi. So obviously what we found is there's several different challenges, and there's several different things to think about and to talk about as it relates to leading a virtual team, or even becoming a member of a remote or a virtual team as well. And so, as I stated earlier, I bring these up because I'm going to get into my strategies, and I want to begin with my first strategy. And my first strategy is this: that if you're going to be effective at leading a virtual team, or you're going to be effective at working with a remote or a virtual team, the first question I think is really essential for us to ask ourselves is, are you applying the right work habits as a remote worker or leader? The first strategy, the first question that I believe we need to address is, are you applying the right work habit as a remote worker or leader? What does this mean? This means that as an individual that desires to excel, I am creating a set of habits. I'm creating a set of disciplines so that I can do my job as a remote leader, as a remote worker, in an excellent manner. And this is important because not only are there different challenges with being the leader of a virtual remote team, but also there's different skill sets that will be required as well. And it's one of the reasons why I love this quote. It said, habits not only have a direct impact on our growth, our success, and our impact, but this is what's powerful. 40% of your habits affect your daily behavior and your decision-making. So the disciplines and the habits and the things that we do and things that members of our team do on a daily basis not only affect us personally, but ultimately they can affect us from doing our job at an optimum level as a virtual leader or even as a remote worker. And it's one of the reasons why I think this is so critically important, is because I've realized that if we're going to excel, if we're going to do our job really well, if our team is going to do their job very well, then they got to develop a set of habits or a set of disciplines that works for them. And I'll share this a little later. So for me, one of my habits is I believe in exercising. So every time I wake up in the morning, I'll take a walk. And after I finish the day, I'll do a walk. Exercising is good for me. Prayer is good for me. Rest breaks. We're going to talk about that later. Just taking breaks and just chilling. Consistent communication. So when I'm walking or when I'm taking breaks or when I'm going to get something to eat, I'll call a friend on the phone. Like I have one of my best friends. He always says, Josh, you always call me when you go to get something to eat. Absolutely. That's my break, but that's my communication with other individuals, with other people. Positive learning. That inspires me, that motivates me. So how can I incorporate positive learning on a daily basis? How can I incorporate reading articles and doing things that are going to help me to learn and to grow? And then having vision or purpose, having my vision, what I'm trying to do, where I'm trying to go, making sure that it's directly in front of me. These are some of the personal habits and disciplines that I've been able to incorporate that have enabled me to do what I've done for the past 15 years. And I think I've been a little bit successful. If I'm still doing it today, that's a little bit of success. And so that's really what's worked for me. And it's important that we have these disciplines, and it's important that we have these habits. And it's one of the reasons I love these two quotes. I think these two quotes really affirm what I'm talking about today. And the first quote says this: it says, a major benefit of working from home is that you don't need to take time to do your full morning routine, including hair, makeup, and business casual attire. And for those that may live in LA or other parts of the country, you understand there's a lot of traffic. However, how we look can directly impact how we feel. And so without a routine of some sort, your mind can struggle to wake up and engage. So what this individual is saying is that maybe you don't have to get up and do a routine, and maybe you don't have to take a shower, maybe you don't have to get dressed. But what the author is alerting us to is that these type of morning routines can help us do our job at an optimum level. They go on to say that having some kind of morning routine like changing clothes, taking a shower, or going for a walk around the block can be very beneficial in helping us to do our job at an excellent level as it relates to virtual or leading a remote team. I love this other quote. It says, "Even when I worked in an office, I would often bring work home with me. When I started working remotely, it was just a recipe for disaster. Over time, I found two things to be very important." This is a big cliche, and everybody says it's a little bit, it's true. Rest is very important, and time off is very important. So in essence, what this author is letting us know is that maybe they don't have a morning routine of changing clothes, of brushing their teeth, or whatever the case may be. But although I think brush your teeth is important, don't get me wrong. But what they're saying is it's just taking breaks. It's implementing breaks throughout the day that are going to allow me to chill, are going to allow me to relax, and allow me to gather myself so I can continue to come back and do things at an optimum level. So these are some quotes. These are some thoughts about the importance of developing the proper work habits as well as the proper disciplines that are needed to do your job at an optimum level as a virtual leader or member of a remote or diverse team. And as I was doing some research, I came across some other habits that I thought I would share with you today of successful remote employees. One was setting daily goals, developing a schedule that works for you. So maybe you want to wake up later in the day, and hopefully your employer lets you do that, but you work later. Connecting with others consistently. We talked about that, limiting distractions. So what can you do on a daily basis to ensure that you're not being distracted, to ensure that you're being focused? Plan intentional conversations. Are there intentional conversations? I like to say intentional coaching sessions where you're connecting with people, building relationships with people that are part of your team. Another habit is learning how or creating a structure to resolve internal and external conflicts quickly. So what framework have you put in place in order to deal with conflict? So these are some of the habits that I read about that related to successful remote employees. And all of these are good, and all of these are important, and you can go on Google tonight and Google, and you'll see a variety of other things. But one of the things I think is important as it relates to habits is not just your competency as it relates to work, but also your wellness. I think one of the big challenges that I believe we're going to face coming out of COVID-19 is your wellness. Now, again, this is a wellness wheel. It deals with your spiritual, your emotional, your intellectual, your physical, your social, your environmental, and your financial. But wellness is so important. Your emotional wealth, your social wellness, your spiritual wellness, or even your physical health. It's important that we are making sure that we're staying well in order to do our job effectively, because if some of these aspects of the wellness wheel are not at optimum level, I have found that can affect us from doing our job really, really well. So some strategies that I have tried to incorporate is exercise and nutrition. Again, I talked about exercise, but also eating the right things. Got to watch what I eat. I found that when I eat certain things in the middle of the afternoon, I get more tired. I can become more lazy. But if I eat more lighter things, it helps me. I've learned that if I get more vegetables or fruits or things that'll give me more energy, vitamins, these are things that I can do to increase my wellness. Overcoming emotional triggers. And again, that's a whole nother session when we deal with emotional intelligence. How do you deal with emotional triggers? How do you deal with emotional challenges? And during this time with COVID-19, there's so many things that can be thought about that we have to deal with. Another one is positive reflection and gratitude, just giving thanks, just taking the time to give thanks and to reflect on what good has happened. And I think that's important. I often tell people, my good speaking friend Della Toro once told me, he said, it's impossible to stay in a negative state if you're consistently giving thanks. So we're finding stuff to give thanks about. I love what Nadine said. She said, I find the best work in the morning and the afternoon around 3 p.m. I start checking out. That's good, Nadine. So maybe you want to get up earlier in the morning so you can get off later in the afternoon. I love that. Scheduling time to do what you love. And this is another important thing, like doing things you love. There's certain things that I love to do. Believe it or not, I love video games. And so I would literally take a half-hour break and play video games to just get my mind just decompressed. And then I'll go back to doing what I'm doing. Again, I talked about friends. I talked about reading, maybe a therapist, and maybe just having someone to talk to. Just talk through situations, just talk through issues, talk through conflict. And then intentional walks, intentional conversations. These are some of the things that I have found that are extremely important as it relates to having the proper habits and the proper disciplines in place in order to be more effective at ultimately not only leading a virtual team, but ultimately being a part of a virtual or remote team. We not only got to be concerned about our competencies as it relates to habits, but we also got to be concerned about wellness, making sure that we're okay, making sure that everything within us is okay as well. So these are a few things that I think are important as it relates to habits. And what I want to do really quickly, and hopefully I get a little bit more participation, and I want to ask a question. This is a question for the group. The question is this: what are 3 habits that you can implement that will enable you to lead work with remote teams more effectively? So really for about the next 3 to 5 minutes, I want you just to think about what we talked about. And I want to, and maybe you have some already. Maybe there's some habits, maybe there's some disciplines that you've already implemented. But as we take this moment really quickly and just to reflect on what has been talked about, my first question for you is this: what are 3 habits or disciplines that you can implement that will enable you to lead or work with remote teams more effectively? So for this next 3 to 5 minutes, I'm going to give you time to think about it. And if you can put, your 3 in the chat room, that would be amazing. And I just want to see and get a little understanding of what are your 3 habits? What are the 3 habits that you do need to do on a daily basis in order to become more effective at leading or ultimately working amongst a remote group? So this is your time to reflect and just write down some things that you feel are important for you. So the first one is Robert Johnson: maintain my 1 hour lunch break. I know that's right, Robert. Robert says, I need to maintain my 1 hour lunch break. That is so critically important. Man, that's important. Not just doing work, not just work fatigue, but also the fact of looking on a screen for such a long time. I love that. Another one he said that allows him peace, is non-negotiable, and gives outside breath. So this 1 hour lunch gives him breath. It gives him strength. I love that. Watching TV, that's true. Watching TV, maybe there's a Netflix, maybe there's a favorite show that you like to watch, and maybe that's the moment that you need to take time out in order to take the time just to watch something. I love that. Connecting on the phone, reading something. I love talking with family and friends. I love these different disciplines and these different habits. And it's interesting, Robert, we have some of the same things. I do some of the same exact things that I do throughout the day in order to ensure that I can do my job at an optimum level and stay motivated and stay inspired and stay encouraged. Really, really, really awesome. If there's any other people that would like to share, what are 3 habits? What are 3 things that you like to do? I love this, Nadine. She says, I take regular breaks at least twice a day. I love it. I love it. Regular breaks twice a day. Come on, somebody. Regular breaks twice a day. That's important. To be honest with you, Nadine, I live in Miramar, Florida, one of the places in which I stay. And my wife would tell you, I love to go to Starbucks. But the interesting thing is I go to multiple Starbucks. So I have like 3 Starbucks within about a 5 to 10 mile radius. And so I go to one Starbucks, take a break, go to another Starbucks, go eat lunch, and go to another Starbucks. And my drive and going to different locations is my break to just decompress from what I'm doing. I love that, Nadine. Angelica, she said time discipline. Come on, time discipline. Yeah, marking out moments throughout the day. For me, literally I have multiple streams. So we have speaking, we have webinars and virtual events. I'm writing books, and I'm doing a conference, and then there's some other investment things I work on. So really managing my time and managing where to do things is really important for me. I love that. Nadine, eat nutritious food to fuel my body. That's so important. Yeah, you got to eat. We got to eat right. So true. Nadine, is there any specific foods that you have found that enable you to get more strength? I would love to hear what your thoughts are about that. One thing at a time, Angelica. I love it. I'm doing one thing at a time. I love it, Angelica. Thank you. Elena. Hey, Elena. Regular team buddies. Yeah, checking in. I love that. I'm going to talk about that a little later. Team buddies, people that I can talk to, people we can conversate. How are things going? I love it. I love it, Jen. A good breakfast. Yes, indeed. A flex schedule for students. I think that's so, yeah. So for those that don't know Jennifer, me and Jennifer are great friends, and she works at St. John's University, and she works with students. And I love that you create a flex schedule so you can meet with students. And even if you're a leader of a team, one of the things I talk about in my upcoming book is I talk about the importance of creating moments to have coaching sessions with the members of your team. So I love that. And that can be decompressing. That can be, that can alleviate stress, just talking to someone and just having a discussion. Vegetables high in fiber and low sugar. There we go. So Nadine says, get vegetables high in fiber and low in sugar. And I pray. Angelica said, I pray. Hey, I pray every day, Angelica. Let me tell you something. I am doing a lot of praying, especially during COVID-19. That is something that I do a lot. In addition to what everyone else said, everyone said a variety of things that I like to say as well. But I want to throw this in there, and I think I talked about it a little bit, but really just want to say just doing what you love. One of the things that I love about being virtual is, not all, but some companies will give you more flexibility. And sometimes maybe that flexibility is not a 30-minute break in the day. Maybe you need a 2-hour break in the day. Maybe you like to paint. Maybe you like to go swimming. I don't know. I'm near a beach. Maybe some people are near beaches or lakes, or maybe you have a pool at your house, but maybe taking a swim. Just doing things that like to have fun and coming back to work. Not to say that I want to say you want to make sure your employer lets you do that, but if you get that 2-hour break, maybe that you need. So I saw Nadine say by 3 p.m. I get tired. So maybe there may be a way to do like 4 hours from 8 to 12 hard, 12 to 2 or 3 if you could take a break, and then from 3 to 7 or 8, boom, do it again. Just some things to think about as it relates to your habits and your disciplines as a virtual worker. And I also want to say this, and I think this is so critically important. There's a pastor that I know by the name of Pastor Stephen Furtick, and he says something really powerful. He talks about being in a rhythm, and he says sometimes when you're in this rhythm, you can get into a rut. If you're a creative or innovative or someone likes to always be moving around, you probably understand you're more of like to do different things, experiment different things, adventure, not more of the structure. And one of the things he talked about in certain instances, he would have to change his rhythm. So maybe make some adjustments. So instead of doing something at night, I'm going to move that to the morning. And instead of doing what I was doing in the morning, I'm going to move it to the night. Because as you adjust your rhythm to the season that you're in, it can help you to be more productive and ultimately perform on a higher level. But thank you all so much. I love the comments. Thank you so much for the comments. I would have people share. I may have people share later. There's a way that we can do that as well. But I want to move on to my second tip. So the first tip that we dealt with is our individual habits. Our second one I want to deal with is, have you developed a strategy to build what I call strong interpersonal relationships? Now, this is a big one, interpersonal relationships. I often like to say developing interpersonal relationships consists of not only eradicating the challenges of a lack of face-to-face communication. So the reality is this: when you're leading or you're working with a remote or virtual team, it's different from face-to-face. We all know that. It's pretty clear if you've been working from home, this is the truth. So we got to figure out, how do I eradicate the challenges that will exist because of a lack of face-to-face communication, and what type of strategies can I use to have better communication, support, trust, and connectedness? See, one of the things I've discovered about interpersonal relationships is you build trust, you build support, you have more effective communication. I'm sure many of you have worked with people for several years. You can just look at someone and poof, I understand exactly what you're saying. There's just that intuition. There's just learning about someone. When you're working with someone, maybe there's what they call those water cooler conversations where you just start having conversations about life, having conversations about your family, maybe conversations about vacation. There's just these common conversations that we have in face-to-face that we may not always be able to have when we're working virtually, that enables us to really build relationships, really build community, and really build connectedness to one another. And one of the things I've discovered with virtual teams and remote teams is sometimes it's more tougher to create these interpersonal relationships. And not only do studies show this, but there was one article that I read online. It said face-to-face is 10 times more effective than the phone. And the phone is 10 times more effective than email. So let's just say if we're communicating on email, it's 20 times more effective face-to-face than email. And I'm sure many of us are doing emails and we're communicating through email. And even the phone, even the phone for that matter, is still more effective to communicate in person. So we see the challenges that exist. Another study that I saw in a survey of 2,000 people, they found that 60% of respondents said they would be more inclined to stay if they had more friends at work. So in essence, one of the things I'm going to talk about a little bit later is we're going to talk about isolation and being isolated, being by yourself and not having that friendship, not having that connection and that community, especially with those who are part of the millennial generation or work with those who are part of millennials. Millennials are very community focused. They're very relationship driven and collaboration. So being virtual creates a little bit more challenges as it relates to this. Another study by Connexa Research Institute found that 50% of the positive changes in communication patterns within the workplace can be credited to social interaction. So if I'm going to be more effective at communicating, if I'm going to be more effective at building relationships, my social interactions, my interpersonal relationships, my water cooler, maybe retreat, maybe going to lunch with someone, all these type of things help us to build those interpersonal relationships, and they help us to become more effective, although we're not working together, more effective at working together virtually. And so the challenge becomes, what am I going to do in order to ensure that I can create more positive interracial relationships? And it's one of the reasons I love this model that was created by Dr. Karen Sobel. It's called the virtual distance model. And the virtual distance model not only asserts that the greater the virtual distance, the higher, hear this, the greater the virtual distance, the higher the negative impact on the team in terms of innovation effectiveness, trust, work satisfaction, role, goal clarity, and project success. So the more distance I have up from each other, the less innovation, the less trust, the less work satisfaction, the less clarity, and the less project success. And there's so much more we can get in as it relates to that. But I also want to found that virtual distance can lead to emotional and psychological detachment over time. One area where this becomes very clear is long distance relationships. I have a good friend, we call him the dating doctor, and he talked, I never forget, he was doing a presentation, and he said to college students, he said, if you're in a long distance relationship, most likely it's going to fail because most long distance relationships do not work. Again, the more apart we are, the more distance we are, the more challenges that we have to deal with. As a speaker that travels, that's on the road, me and my wife have to do certain things in order to ensure that we can keep our emotional and our psychological connection. And sometimes that's making a rule that at least every 2 to 3 weeks, I make sure I get home and we can see each other in person. My daughter, she lives all the way in California. And so I make it a point to get there at least every month, sometimes 2 weeks out of the month, because I want to make sure that I'm there. I mean, FaceTime is good, on the phone is incredible, but at the end of the day, there's nothing that can substitute for that face-to-face interaction. And so that will be a challenge with your team. That will be a challenge maybe for you not having that community or those people to connect with. And so ultimately, what are some strategies, right? What are some ways that we can improve our interpersonal relationships? Well, one is creating strategic ways to connect with others on your team. So if you're leading a team, if you're a part of the team, what are some strategic ways you can create connection throughout the day? And we've already talked a little bit about that. Technical devices such as Slack, or there's a variety of others that enable you to connect more frequently. So what technical, what platforms can you create where you can connect more frequently? I heard someone say a buddy system. I believe Jennifer said that. So I believe Elena said that. There's a buddy system. Checking on people. I believe someone said that. Creating availability. This is important. Availability. This is critical. Are you just available? When someone has an issue, are you available? When someone has an issue, that availability makes a huge difference, especially when people have pressing needs, or especially when people just need answers immediately. And then I like to often say virtual events and retreats to build connections. We're doing our national conference, and it's going to be virtual for the first time. There's a lot of wonderful things we do each year that connect students, live DJ, and excitement. And now one of the things I'm consistently learning about is how can I create that virtually? How can we create this fun, this excitement virtually? What type of events, retreats, just talking to people. And if you get zoomed out, maybe doing a conference call where you're just talking over audio or a variety of other things, but just doing things in order to build that connection. That's really important. And so my second question is this. What are 3 ways that you can build more interpersonal relationships with your team of remote workers? So we dealt with your habits. Now the next one I had, what are 3 ways that you can develop greater interpersonal relationships with the members of your team? What are 3 ways? So I want you to think about that, about 3 things. What are 3 specific things that you can do in order to become more effective at ultimately building positive relationships with your team? So I want to give you all some time to think about that. As I'm waiting in the chat room, please feel free to put that in the chat, and just like to hear some of the things that you're doing in order to become more effective. And if there's anyone that would like to come on here and talk, I definitely can open that up as well and bring you on if you like to talk out loud and just share it and everyone see your face. We can do that as well. So let me know there, and I would love to bring you on as well. So I'm here. Virtual lunches. I love that. Virtual lunches. I love that. Virtual lunches. That's awesome. That's really good. There's a friend a mutual friend that me and my friend know that actually works at the University of Tennessee. And she does virtual lunch and learns, and I've heard that they've been really, really powerful. So I love that. Virtual lunches, scheduling virtual lunches to talk and to communicate and see how people are doing. What are some other strategies that people have done in order to build positive relationships? Jen, virtual coffee break. I like that. As if they were in person. Yes, I agree, Jennifer. Socializing is so important. Virtual coffee breaks. I love it. I know we're all adults here, so one of my good friends in HR has HR and Hermosa. So they have Hermosas and they have discussions revolving around HR as well. So that's pretty awesome as well. Consistent updates. I love that, Angelica. Consistent updates. I think with COVID-19, we saw the importance of that, just as far as the press conferences, the press conversations that we've seen each day. Also, again, as I shared earlier, we do Circle of Change, National Leadership Conference, have team members all throughout the country. And I know when we were getting ready for our conference that unfortunately was canceled in New York City, we had to, do a lot of conversation through emails and a lot of conversation through Instagram and a variety of other ways, keeping people consistent to know what's happening. And even as we're planning forward, it's still that consistent conversation and those updates. That's so incredibly important to keep the connection. Anything else, any other strategies that we can use in order to build that interpersonal relationships with members of our team? Because it's really informal check-ins. I love that. Informal check-ins. That's great. I love that. So, basically just calling people, just to see how they're doing, just checking on them. I'm working on that. I have a lot of contacts on LinkedIn. And one of the things I've really been trying to work on is just identifying 5 people every day that I can just say, how are you doing? How's everything going? I'm thinking about you. Hope all is well. Today I had a friend of mine that works at a college in Arizona give me a call. And we were just touching base and we were just talking, ended up being on the phone for 30 minutes. It was a long conversation, but it was good to catch up. It was good to hear how things were going and just, again, providing me with energy and excitement, just having those conversations. And as many of you know, there's just certain people you talk to, they just give you energy. You get excited. Make your materials perky. Provide your colleagues in some motivational sayings on quotes. I love that. Yeah. Affirmations, excitement, make materials. I didn't do it for this, but normally with all of my virtual presentations, when I'm speaking, I normally have a worksheet or a packet that I provide. I didn't do that for this, but I normally do that as well because I've learned, writing notes and that sort of thing is really effective as well. So I love that. I think that's amazing and that's ideal. And also, again, shifting your communication, shifting how you talk. I was thinking about, for our conference today, I was thinking about when they have virtual conversations, having people go outside if the Wi-Fi is accessible and having a conversation outside versus inside at your desk like I'm doing now. So those are very, very great points. I appreciate everyone for sharing that information, and that really is just that's so true that these things are so important as it relates to building more interpersonal relationships with your team of remote workers. So we've dealt first off with habits, and we dealt with disciplines, and we identified not only competence but also our wellness. And then we dealt with building more interpersonal relationships, and I think that's vitally important. And we talked about various strategies. And the last tip that I want to share for this session today, again, there's so many more to talk about, is are you leading with the right leadership attributes or characteristics? One of the things that I've been aware of is if you're going to be an effective leader of remote workers or remote teams, not only got to be aware of what I call different leadership styles, but I've learned you got to be aware of how to implement or to apply these different leadership styles. So me getting my doctoral in leadership and my master's, I've heard about a lot of different styles. So there's situational leadership, there's transactional leadership, there's authoritarian leadership. There's a variety of different leadership styles, adaptable leadership. There's a variety of different styles, and each style is different for different circumstances. So when you look at the model of situational leadership, which I believe was created by Kenneth Blanchard, he talks about in different situations, you apply different leadership styles or different leadership applications. And I think the same is true with virtual leadership, or even when you're leading a virtual team. The leadership has changed. What may have worked traditionally may not work when you're leading a virtual team. And so you got to be aware of what attributes do you have to put more of an emphasis on it. And that's what I really want to specify is when you're leading virtually, I have found that you have to put more of an emphasis on certain leadership attributes than you would if, say, for instance, you were in face-to-face, if you're having a face-to-face conversation. And this is really clear. And one quote says, studies of remote managers and employee relationships deem new leadership and communication methods are critical to avert worker well-being issues. And it says managers who are not yet competent in these skills may miss the expected gains from a flex work strategy. So they're dealing with people that have flex work or adaptable leaders. But they said if you don't change your communication, if you don't change your leadership, it can really affect your productivity, it can affect your results, and it can affect ultimately your performance. And they said leadership and communication. I think the same is true with virtual leadership. And I found in my study, I did a whole study on the impact of that transformational leadership has on virtual millennial volunteers. And the word that I want to identify is virtual millennials. So these were virtual. And what I found in my study is that transformational leadership actually had a positive correlation with virtual workers or virtual members of a team. So when the leader was transformational, when the leader was able to implement or apply strategies of a transformational leader, they were more effective. So for those of you who may be responsible for leadership trainings or maybe responsible for training your virtual or your remote workers or your virtual managers, I think a great style to teach them is the transformational leadership style, and really talk to them about how to implement this style of leadership, how to implement this type of leadership style as it relates to virtual teams. And really quickly, here's a few attributes that I've identified out of transformational leadership that I think are vitally important when it relates to leading a virtual team. Number one is they care. Most transformational leaders that I've read about, that I've learned about, care about people. And I think when we're dealing with virtual leadership, remote working, COVID-19, I think we need more compassion. I think we need to care and support people more than ever. I think we need to be empathetic. I think those are qualities of leadership or qualities of working on a team that are extremely important and something to consider for your leaders or your managers. Number two, we got to be adaptable. And I think that's pretty obvious. I mean, as I've been following COVID-19, I feel like every day there's something new. Every day there's something new that comes up. I mean, when it first began, they said that, they didn't have enough masks. Now they're saying everyone to wear a mask, and I'm sure more things are going to come up, and I'm sure organizations, I'm sure colleges, universities are going to be making changes on the fly. One day you wake up and they say, oh, we got to change this, up and change this. And one of the things I've discovered about transformational leaders is they're open to change. They're open to innovation. They're open to new ways of doing things. They're open to ideas. What works for our team? What's most effective for our team? I know it may work for me, but what works best for the team? I said this earlier, relationship builders. Transformational leaders, they build relationships because they care. They want to get to know you. They want to know who you are because they want to empower you and build you up. They possess vision and purpose. And not only do they possess vision and purpose, but they're clear in their communication. When I did my study, one of the things that I realized was that a variety of people I was not able to retain or engage because the vision wasn't clearly communicated. When we're leading a virtual team, not only does there have to be a clear vision and clear purpose, but also expectations need to be clear. This is what we're doing. This is where we're going. So people are very clear and communicate so people really hear what is being said. Inspirational. I mean, in a time of COVID-19, working from home, I think inspiration is important. We're doing this. I'm doing a session for another organization next Tuesday on how do you motivate the remote worker. I think that's an important conversation. We saw that as being one of the challenges. Transformation leaders have a desire to see people grow. One of the things that I think is important is you got to be a learner. And for you to take the time today and to be part of this virtual masterclass lets me know that you're a learner. You want to learn. You want to get better. And I think that's so important. And no matter how much I've learned and done research on remote working and virtual leadership, I'm always learning. I'm always trying to learn new things because this thing is going to continue to grow and continue to expand. People are going to come up with great ideas. People are going to come up with great ways of doing things. And as I often say in all my other master classes, I don't want to flatten the curve. I want to be ahead of the curve. I want to be ahead of what is going on. And the only way that I can do that is if I'm educated, I'm learning, I'm constantly trying to learn new things, but also growing my people, teaching them new things. How can I help you? How can I empower you? This is part of transformational leaders. And the last one I say is I think transformational leaders can be trusted. Why? Because you care. When people know that you care, they're more likely to trust you. And transformational leaders are very effective at building trust. And so these are some of the attributes of the leadership styles that I think are important as it relates to leading a virtual or a remote team. And so one of the things I want to ask the people in the group right now is what are some attributes of leadership that maybe you saw have been successful or that you would desire in people that are leading you? What are some styles of leadership that you have found that will be effective for you as far as leading remote workers or even a virtual or remote team? What are some things that have worked for you? Would love to hear some of your comments in the chat box as what has worked for you. I know for us, we do consistent updates with our team. We have consistent updates with our virtual team. I know another thing that we've done is we have what we call GroupMe. I'm sure many of you are probably familiar with GroupMe, but we have GroupMe chats. For instance, when it's someone's birthday, we go on there and say, happy birthday, happy birthday. So that's how we communicate. And then other people that weren't even aware that it was that person's birthday, oh my gosh, it's your birthday. So those are some of the things that we have done in order to be effective. I love it, Angela. Be assertive. Be assertive. Be assertive. I like that. Be assertive. So leaders are assertive. They're assertive. Robert, flexible and knowledgeable. I love that. Knowledgeable and flexible. And I want to dig in that understanding of where your people are at. Where are your people at? Where are your team members at? What's going on? Because a lot of times, I don't know about you, there's this nonverbal communication, and someone can walk into your office and you can tell maybe they're not having a good day. Maybe they face some challenges. Maybe they were in traffic. They can't stand traffic. Whatever the case may be, you're aware of that, and boom, you can deal with that. But when it's virtual, most people are going to put their best faces on. So you'll have the athletic shorts on, and then maybe have like the suit and tie on, whatever the case may be. But I love that. Know the demographics of your team. That's important. Oh, that's a whole nother discussion when we start dealing with diversity and cultural diversity and different demographics, and even from a tech personalities, even what people preference as far as technology is concerned. That's amazing. I love that. Those are great points. Any other points that anyone wants to share that would like to share with the rest of the people that you have found to be effective as far as leadership is concerned when it deals with a remote or a virtual team anymore? So I'll give people a couple of more minutes to see what you have to put in the chat box. And if you've already put all the ones, that's okay. So I don't see any more, so I'm gonna come back to the screen. We'll go back to the screen. So we go back to, so these are attributes of transformational leadership. And so at the end of the day, what you want to make sure you're thinking about is what's going to make me a good leader? What's going to make me an effective leader? What's going to make me effective at leading members of my virtual or remote team? What qualities must I possess in order to be a great asset to my team or to my remote team? And this is important. This is important reflection. It's important things that I believe that we should always be thinking about as it relates to leading people. I love what Jennifer just said. She said, being able to make decisions even in uncertain times. People desire clarity and open communication. That's so important, right? The tough decisions. Could you imagine? Now, I said earlier, Jennifer's on a campus, and could you imagine what leadership is facing on campus right now? I mean, going back to school, do we bring students back? Do we not bring students back? Is there going to be a second wave? All these decisions and all these things going on are extremely tough, and you got to be able to make some decisions that are clear and effectively communicated to other people. I love what Elena said: curious about others, a good listener, truly interested, authentic. I love what Angelica said. Angelica said a good listener. Oh yeah, that's incredible. I'll just drop this. One of the things I talk about when I deal with my diversity programs is I talk about cultural intelligence. And for me, cultural intelligence is not only the ability to understand different groups of people from various cultures, but it's also doing the necessary things to create that positive cross-cultural relationship. And under that umbrella, I talk about the importance of, number one, appreciating different cultures, but then, as Elena said, being curious, get to know people, get to talk to people. And then, as Angelica and Elena said, being an active listener, listening, hearing what people are saying, developing an understanding through your active listening. And then ultimately, I think the big one is having the courage to make the necessary changes that are necessary that will improve everyone that is involved. I love that a lot. I see Thompson, reason behind the decision, help understanding. Yep, exactly. Understanding behind decisions. That is so incredibly important. So these are things we have to think about as we're leading virtual teams, as we're working remotely, as we're working from home. These are things we got to consider. What things do I need to do on a daily basis to perform at an optimum level? Number two, how am I going to build stronger interpersonal relationships? What are some strategies I can do to make our team even tighter? Will it be the same? Maybe not, but I can do my best to make it more stronger, because the stronger we are, the more productivity, the more performance, and the greater impact that we're going to have. And then when it comes to leadership, what style of leadership must I implement in order to be effective as well? That's awesome. And I love what Angelica said, be cautious in the way you deliver the message. That's so important. The way you deliver it, the caution and how you deliver it. That's a whole nother discussion we do with communication, because as you know, you can text something and people reads it the wrong way, or even sometimes in your tone. So I think that's incredible. That's incredibly important. Now, as I'm preparing to close out this session, still have a few minutes left, but I want to take this moment. We've been here for about 53 minutes, and I'm fully aware that many of you may have been on the screen the whole day, so I don't want to take all your time. But I want to take this time of reflection, and I want to ask the question throughout this virtual masterclass. What I would like to know is, what has been your greatest takeaway? If there's something that was shared, something that was communicated, I would like to know what has been your greatest takeaway today. So if you can take some time to put that into the chat, I would greatly appreciate that. But I really would love to know what has been your greatest takeaway. Continue learning. I love that. That's true. Yeah, we're all learning. Exactly. Got to continue learning. Cannot stop learning. Got to continue to learn and continue to grow in this area as it relates to being a remote worker or even a virtual leader. I interchange the words off and on. So that's awesome. Any other things that you would say, I think this is something I'm going to take away from this session? The power of transformational leadership. Awesome. Yeah, transformational leadership is powerful, not only virtually, but also I also found it's a positive correlation with members of the millennial generation. And so I have a new book coming out called Red Leadership, Retain, Engage, and Develop Culturally Diverse Leaders of the Younger Generation. And one of the things I found in my study when I talk about retention is the positive correlation between transformational leadership and leading members of the millennial generation. Not to put them all into a box, but that's something that I've been able to identify. No, the book's not out yet, Elena. It's coming out this summer, August or September. It's coming. It's coming. You can actually pre-order it, though, very soon. I'm working on that information. I love what Jennifer said. Try new things. Don't fear change. Embrace it. Yes, try new things. Come on. Man, have I been trying a lot of new things, and I'm going to consistently try new things as well. That is a phenomenal point. Especially in this season, innovation, you're going to fail at some points. It's okay. I often say failure is a preparation for success. So that's great. Robert Johnson says, adjust your perspective related to establishing positive habits that will help others. I love that, Robert. That's great. That's great. That's great. Adjusting our perspective, even how we embrace working from home. Some people don't like it. Some people don't like it at all. So really adjusting it is really, really important as well, and just really embracing it being versus the opposite. Qualities of successful leadership. I'm glad you got that. That's important. We need effective leadership. Angelica said, thank you for a meaningful webinar. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate all that you said, Angelica. That's awesome. I really, really appreciate that. And thank you so much for sharing that with me. I really appreciate that. So my last thing is this. Just want to share this with you. So want to share this last thing with you. So I did this free webinar. I may do another one, but my goal is really to start doing more paid webinars in the future, as well as for organizations as well. So I have, as you saw on the flyer, I have 5 different programs, and I plan on doing another virtual masterclass in about the next couple of months, which will be $49. And if you're interested in being a part of that masterclass, I'll have a worksheet with that, and hopefully can make it a little bit more engaging as well. But if you're interested in that, just email me and you can register for that. It'll probably be done in the month of July, as well as if you're an organization and you feel this would be good for your employees, you may feel this may be good for your leaders. I'm also offering this program as well. And again, because there's so many different things to talk about, I just shared 3 tips that I thought would be good for you today. But there's so many different directions that can be taken as it relates to becoming more effective at leading and working with a virtual or remote team. So this is some information that I wanted to share with you. If you're interested, please feel free to email me. Again, my email address is visionxybookings@gmail.com. So that's all the information. Will you be able to get a copy of the slides? Oh, Robert, yes, I can. If you email that email address and let me know that you'd like a copy of the slides, I can definitely do that as well. Also, this is being recorded, so I'll be able to obviously have it up to replay as well. So I will definitely have all that information as well available. But I want to thank you all so much. It's been a pleasure and an honor for having all of you join me for this virtual masterclass. It's actually the first one of this type that I have done, and so you're the first group of people that I have spoken to about this specific set of information. Definitely expect many more to come in the future, but I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to be a part of this program. Again, if you have any questions, my information is there on the screen, so I will be there to answer any questions that you may have. Have an incredible rest of the day. Have an incredible rest of the week. And again, I'm always here to answer any questions that you may have, or even if you would like more information for some of the upcoming programs, I'm always available for that as well. Thank you all so much. Have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you all at some point virtually. Bye-bye.